Hey guys, this is Red and Blue, your channel on YouTube for all things PSG in English. Please subscribe. Today, after our draw against Strasbourg 2 days ago now, there's been a lot of chatter again around PSG and whether it is time to worry now or not. The reality is that, the 4 past league games have been 1 defeat, 2 draws, and only 1 win for PSG. So we are on a trend which is frankly, like, if you just look at the cold hard math, not great for us. And so I think it's legitimate to really ask the question and go a little bit deeper. And so that's why I wanted to do it separately from the post-game analysis, because if you watched yesterday's video, there was a lot of emotion and a lot of things that really troubled me in the Strasbourg game specifically. But for this one, I want to take a little bit of a wider lens and not just look at the last game or look at what didn't work and look at the moment and so on, but really do a bit of a deeper dive and look at the reality of the things that are getting said around PSG and whether they actually hold up to scrutiny or whether, the data doesn't correlate. Because I think ultimately that's where you've got some interesting learnings. So the first thing, and I think that draws from the Strasbourg game, for me, I came out of this game saying, our defense did a really horrible job. We get 3 goals scored on us. There's mistakes from our 3 central defenders, from Chevalier. Everyone has got some sort of blame. Even coming out of it, I've got some comments which were very true, and I didn't really mention that enough in the video. But that apart from Warren, our midfield also did a pretty horrible job at defending and coming back and helping their defenders and so on. And if you see Doué's pass on Strasbourg's second goal, for example, it's a prime example of how midfield made things worse instead of making things better. At the same time, so I've been looking at some data, and I think this is where it gets interesting, because regardless of the game, since the beginning of the season, we've had conversations around our defense isn't good enough. Chevalier is really making mistake after mistake. Beraldo is horrible. Lucas Hernandez is not good enough, and so on. Zabarni is hit and miss, and he's had some good things, but he's also had some horrible ones. So there's been a lot of pushback on our defense and how we're doing in that area. And I think when you look at the stat, it's actually a bit more layered than this. So right now, so far this season, in the first 8 games, we've conceded 8 goals. Last season, at the same point, the first 8 games, we had conceded 7. So granted, 1 more, but it's also not a complete crazy difference. And if you look at the expected goal against, so the data of how many goals should be scored against us, given the opportunities that our opponents are getting, so far this season, the average per game is we should concede 1.11625 goals, 11625, versus last season, the full season, we should have considered 1.0703. So 1.12 versus 1.07. So it is actually a really slim difference in terms of our defensive production versus last season. And the Chevalier conversation, I laid onto him a couple of times. I think he's definitely had some misses this season and some stuff that he urgently needs to get better at. At the same time, right now, the rankings of goalkeepers in Ligue 1 with the most clean sheets, number 1 is Chevalier. He's the only goalkeeper in Ligue 1 who had 4 clean sheets so far this season. It's not Roulier of Marseille. It's not Penders of Strasbourg. It is Chevalier of PSG. So, I definitely think the data doesn't say everything, and there are question marks. But I don't think, if you look at the data, it's as bad as what people are saying. And even if I look, last season for the full season, we ended up doing better than our expected goal against by about 1.40 goals. So we considered over the course of the full season we conceded 1.4 goal less than we should have conceded. And so far this season, we conceded 0.9 goal less than what we should have conceded. So, you know, even the pure quality and the idea of us like getting scored on more easily, I have a hard time finding like a really strong case for it in the data. And once again, the data doesn't say everything. So that's why it's interesting to compare as well, because the data doesn't say everything, but the visual impression sometimes gets it wrong as well. And so I think, you know, then like if it's not so much the defense that's been the trouble, then like it points the finger at something else, which is our offense and our offensive production. And if I look at the data again, and that's where it gets shocking, is that last year at the exact same point of the season, so first, like right now, this season, after 8 games in Ligue 1, we scored 16 goals, so 2 goals per game. Last year, at the same point, after 8 games in Ligue 1, we had scored 25 goals. So that's where like there is a big delta. 16 to 25, that's a huge difference. And if you look at the expected goals, right now this season, our average per game is 1.825. So we're actually scoring a little bit more than our expected goals. Last season, for the full season, it was 3.04. So not quite double, but like almost double the amount of expected goal. And so I think, you know, it points the finger at something, which is like, and I want to roll into this because for me, it's the explanation, it's the injury curse. And I think, candidly, we've been saying that as PSG fan, which is, oh, you know, not everything is working great right now, but look at all of the players we've got injured, and we're missing Dembele, and we're missing Doué, and Kvara has been on and off, and so on and so forth, and we're playing with TTs. But wait until our starters come back, and then you'll see. Not false. I think like there's definitely a case to be made for this. And, you know, I'd have a hard time sitting there and telling you that Ramos is performing at Dembele level. It's definitely not the case. And so I think, you know, there is a case to be made for saying that, for saying, hey, like when the injured come back, watch out, like we can all of a sudden start scoring double the amount of goal, and all of a sudden, like, you know, even if we get scored on 3 times against Strasbourg, it won't matter because we'll have scored 5. And we'll win the game anyway, and we'll be in a good position. Completely fair. I think for me, like the question mark and where I would nuance it is that so far we've seen our starting forwards and our starting attackers get injured early. So Dembele and Doué got injured in the September international window for like 4 to 6 and 6 to 8 weeks. So they're just coming back now. Kvara also, like I said, has been on and off. He's been missing some games. Barcola, he's been playing, but we've been pretty careful with him. And apparently, like, you know, he wasn't in the best shape ever throughout the run of game. And so there's been a lot of missing elements and a lot of missing pieces there. Great. Well, not great, but yeah, you get me. Great, but at the same time, there's 2 things. The first one is that, yes, they're coming back now, but the reality is that we have absolutely like no reason to believe that they run less chances of getting injured moving forward. We all are running under the same assumption, which is now they've had a break because they've been injured. We've given them a bit more extra time so they can actually prepare properly. And so it resets the clock for them. Entirely possible and could very well be the case. And the reality of it as well is that, you know, I think Luis Enrique and his staff proved last season that they're doing a fantastic job of managing fitness levels and managing the players. So they run less chances of injury. But at the same time, we don't know. And maybe, like, you know, Doué is coming back now. Maybe, like, he'll pick up a knock again in 3 games and that will keep going throughout the season. At this point, we really don't know. And the second thing which I wanted to mention is that, yes, right now, like, you know, our offense is not performing as much and our players have been injured. But now it looks like we've progressively entered into a phase where our midfielders are the ones that started getting injured. So Ruiz and Joao Neves have been missing for the longest time now. Vitinha, we've got to manage him and manage his fitness level, and he missed out against Lille, and he missed out against Strasbourg, and so we've had to be pretty careful with him. And the reality is that if our XG are so low, part of it is because our attackers weren't there, but part of it is also because the elaboration of the game and the construction of the opportunities isn't as strong as it used to be last season, because our midfield is not as strong as it used to be last season. And what happens if we keep going, if now we run a phase of our midfielders being injured, and then we go into a phase of our defenders being injured, because, so far, like, the visual impression isn't great on our defense, but what happens if Chevalier gets injured, for example? For all of his fault, apparently, like, Safonov and Zabarny cannot play together. What happens if Nuno Mendes gets injured? He's been like one of the bright lights this season. Hakimi's been on and off, like, in terms of fitness level, but at the same time, like, he's still a big part of the team, and we've seen him. So, like, what happens if he gets injured? So I think, in the end, I think it's completely fair to say, like, hey, we've had a lot of injured players, and it's bound to be getting better, because it cannot really get worse. The reality is that we don't know that. And so it might be true, it might not be, and we've got to cross our fingers a little bit. Cool. And then finally, like, the last thing I wanted to mention as well is that we do have areas of strength, and we do have honest to God reasons to believe. The reality of it is that what we're doing in the Champions League right now is a hell of a lot more impressive than what we were doing at the same time last season. Getting a win in Barcelona, that's a huge performance. Trashing Atalanta like we've trashed them in Parc des Princes, that is a huge performance. And it does set us well, because it gives us flexibility down the road to either not have to play the two games to qualify for the first knockout round, or it gives us credence to rotate our team in the last Champions League game, maybe not play some as seriously as we have. Maybe all of a sudden, like, the last games that we have to play in the group phase against Newcastle doesn't matter at all, and we can play some substitutes there. So it's efforts that we've put in now that we might not have to put in later, and so that's something that we're taking forward. And when it comes to Ligue 1, we play the game against Strasbourg with a lot of our usual starter on the bench, so they can rest in between the international break and the Champions League game. Maybe in January, like, it will be the other way around. They will play the Ligue 1 game and they will rest in the Champions League game. It's entirely possible. So that's the reality that we have, and it shows as well. Because we're playing so well in the Champions League, I think it points the finger to me on a couple of things. The first thing is that, one, like, when we inject a little bit more starters and a little bit more energy into the team, it takes very little to really take us to a top level. And now we've got Doué, and we've got Vara, and we've got Barcola returning. We've got Marquinhos and Dembele who are on the edge, and hopefully Joao Neves and Fabian Ruiz as well. Just give us like 2-3 of those guys back in the team, and we can like get back to nearly a top level. The second thing, which I think is really interesting to think about, is that Luis Enrique, it's his third season in Paris now, and personally, like, I've seen it season after season, which is at the beginning of the season, he uses it to do a lot of experimenting. He plays players in different positions. He tries different tactical shape. Remember when he played the 4-2-4 in Newcastle in the group phase 2 years ago, and people were saying he was completely bonkers because it didn't work. And then like he played like Vitinha in the Fabian Ruiz position at the beginning, before like moving him down as a 6. He held back Nuno Mendes from moving forward until last season. He decided to give him a little bit more freedom. Dembele was on the right before he moved in the middle of the game. So all of those experiments is by way of saying is that sometimes they don't work and sometimes they don't pay off. But also a lot of time they give us the learnings that we need to hit our top level of performance in the second half of the season. And it is something that Luis Enrique himself he said in the game after Strasbourg, which is saying like, hey, like, you know, not great. Obviously, we wanted the win, but at the same time, right now is not the time when you lose or win a title. It's not the time when you win or lose a title. That happens later in the season. And so, you know, we're doing those experiments. We've been trying like the defense with the 3 central defender, which honestly like didn't work for us in Marseille and didn't work for us against Strasbourg. But who's to say that's not like the system that's going to get us through the semi-final of the Champions League this year? If we find ourselves against a tough pressing opponent, and all of a sudden moving back to 3 at the back gives us a lot more options. Who's to say that Mbaye, who's been struggling and producing like pretty uneven performances, is not going to be the Mayulu of the season who scores the 5th goal in the Champions League final. So we have to recognize that what doesn't work right now, like there's benefits to trying it out, even if it doesn't work. And in a way, like as cliche as it sounds, like you've got to trust the process and you've got to trust that things are going to get into place. And the reality is that we do already have a strong base that we can work off of. And so all of those improvements can only take us further. And so I think, you know, overall, it puts us in a relatively good situation. So anyway, this is what I had for you guys. Time to worry. Yeah, I don't think it's a yes or no in the end. I don't personally like. I'm not entirely worried, but I would like us to like start accelerate a little bit. And I think those last 4 Ligue 1 games with so few points on the board, yeah, it is a little bit worrisome in itself. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I have a lot of faith. Obviously, I think all PSG fans, we've got a lot of faith in Luis Enrique. We've got a lot of faith in the club and in the squad. And so we do see them, you know, accelerating progressively throughout the season. So I'll hold myself to that. I think for now, like, let's just keep an eye on how the situation is tracking. Obviously, we'll keep talking about it and keep debating. And hopefully, we're going to see things start to click and start to fall in place and start to improve as well. So yeah, that's what I had for you guys. Let me know in the comment what you think. Are you worried yet? Like, what's your read on our performance? What do you think of all the things that I've said? Is there anything that you agree or don't agree with? And as always, like, please drop a like on the video if you made it this far. Subscribe to the channel if you aren't. And don't forget, ici c'est Paris!